I'm going to start this meeting at 7:09. Diana, can you start for me?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, adoption of the agenda. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Michelle?
Second.
Melissa? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, moving on. Approval of the minutes from September 9th, 2018. Have a motion? So moved. Darren? Cindy? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Abstain.
Thank you, Melissa.
Abstain also.
Thank you, Michelle.
All right, so we have a few presentations to start the night. We actually have a couple of out-of-state field trips, one really far out of state and one much more closer to Connecticut. And then we also have Mr. Holtz providing a presentation on a number of high school data points. So we're going to start with inviting Mr. Perkins up to the podium and discuss his trip that he would like to take to New York. So Mr. Perkins.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for letting me come and present a request for this trip. I apologize I have no students with me. The crew that I would bring, and actually would normally be working with Mr. Trudeau, is at Thomaston Opera House in the Warner tonight, behind the scenes working with some of their productions. So I kind of had to let them go. We're asking to go to New York City on April 4th, 2019, to see the Broadway musical production of Phantom of the Opera, coupled with a choral workshop for their performers, working with members of the cast and the director of music, a dance captain of the production during a morning seminar, and the other half of the group going with us are backstage and crew members who will be spending the morning with a Broadway stage manager. And we've gone on this. This will be our fourth or fifth time going to New York, and our first time with the Phantom of the Opera. And the students in the past years have had the opportunity to see the show from the professional side and the preparation, but also to get to sing and work alongside of people working on a live show and then seeing the show that afternoon. And we're very lucky to get invited back to this limited event year after year. It's not going to get any better for me, Rich. You have filters?
So I want to see if there's any questions.
Is there any questions for Mr. Perkins? Comments? Okay, I'd like to have a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the out-of-state field trip for the Terryville High School Drama Club for students in grades 9 through 12 to New York City, New York, Broadway, and Times Square on April 4th, 2019, to attend one of two workshops prior to seeing the Broadway musical production of Phantom of the Opera.
Second.
Melissa? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? There you go.
All right.
Have fun.
Will do.
The next trip is a bit farther, going out of country to Costa Rica. And I know Miss Erickson is here, right? And I think maybe Christine, are you here too as well to encourage this trip? Yep. So please come on up and Costa Rica.
I'm actually going to let Christine go ahead first and kind of talk about her experience that she had last year on it.
Yeah, sorry, I just got out of volleyball. So basically last year I was able to go on the France and Spain trip, and some of my friends are here that went with me. And it was honestly an experience that if the school didn't offer me, I would have never gotten to take. And it really opened my eyes to the world outside of Connecticut and Terryville, because I've been to like leadership conferences which are in Connecticut, so I've gotten that feel of Connecticut but not necessarily the feel of the world. And I've always known that I wanted to do something in which I help people internationally. And after going on this trip, I was able to see that I really did love being in France and being in Spain. So I was able to see these different languages being talked, and I honestly loved the language of French because I already know Spanish. So as soon as I got home, I looked online. I got some online French classes. I learned some French. I mean, I'm not that great, but hey, I learned. And I feel like without the opportunity that the school gave me, I wouldn't have been able to reach my full potential in actually knowing what I wanted to do. And now I'm going to college next year, and I am planning on majoring in international affairs.
Very cool.
All right. So that being said, hello again. I'm back. You're probably wondering if I am nuts or not, but honestly, I can't talk enough about these trips. This is truly my passion. Aside from teaching the Spanish language here at THS, giving students the opportunity to travel the world and, like Christine said, hopefully have an experience of a lifetime that, changes the trajectory of what they're planning on doing with their lives. So the next one, as you can see in front of you, I'm planning to take students next year, with your approval, to Costa Rica. That would be in April of 2020, getting a jump on it now so that it's a little bit less of a load for the payment for the parents, and we can just plan as much as possible. So this trip is actually totally different than any of the trips we've taken before. It's much more adventurous and outdoorsy, and the Spanish language is really mainly spoken there, a little bit of English, but much less than in Europe. So I think that this is like a totally different experience for these kids. And actually, they're the ones who chose it. I kind of polled a group of students who I knew were interested, and they were all about this trip. So we are going with the EF Tours group again. Mrs. Ritchie is running a tour this April. I'm running one this summer to Greece, and we have had nothing but great experiences with them. Safety-wise, they are there for you 24/7. The tour directors are phenomenal. They're with you from start to finish. Even when we went from country to country last year, we had the same tour guide, and he was amazing. The students can attest that. I mean, they loved him so much. They wanted him to come home with us. So what you get out of it is just, it really helps to allow me to kind of be parent, teacher, nurse, all those roles, right, that I take on while I'm there with the kids. And then the tour director kind of does the other side of it, getting us into all of those places without a hitch. So that's why, again, we chose to go with EF. Any questions?
I have a question. Will you take kids that have graduated?
Unfortunately,
Allison's already tried that in.
Allison and Macy have already been knocking on the door for this one. When you're older, maybe you can chaperone. Yes.
When is the soonest time that we can fill out the application to go?
Love that question. So as soon as the board approves this, there is an application process, because I do like to see why students want to go and why they're going to be a good fit and a good representation really of Terryville outside of Connecticut and the USA. So within the next few weeks, we're going to start talking about it, and we'll have an initial meeting where your parents will come and get all the info so that all of our T's are crossed and I's are dotted, and you can sign up.
Any other questions?
In this trip, how much of this trip is going to actually show like the areas of Costa Rica that are not economically?
I mean, really the whole trip does, because Costa Rica really isn't a super thriving economically.
More than, like you call it, impoverished.
There is some of it, yeah. So like when we get to go to the plantation and the farms, you're seeing a totally different lifestyle, and it's more rural. And actually, given that we are in a town where there is a lot of farming, I think it would be sort of relatable. And then my kids who speak Spanish will get to practice their Spanish too.
Because I'm just looking at it, the social economic experience that these kids will have, seeing what life is like.
Yep.
I mean, some of these kids went to France and Spain.
Yep.
A little bit.
So this is totally different.
Oh yes, this will be eye-opening.
Yes, I agree.
Any other questions? Okay, you want to make a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the out-of-state field trip for Terryville High School students in grades 10 through 12, World Language, Business, and History departments, trip to Costa Rica beginning on April 9th, 2020 through April 18th, 2020.
Can I have a second?
Second.
Okay. And Melissa? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? By the way, I just want to say thank you for you and Mrs. Ritchie for doing this for the kids, because it was a long time before kids actually left, so it's exciting. So
It is my pleasure. Thank you.
It's nice.
Great
you.
job. Thank you, Ms. Erickson.
Thank you.
Okay, superintendent's update.
Nope, we have one more presentation. You just can't see them. You just
put a big
can't.
star next to it. I did, look, I put a star next to it.
So,
I
Mr.
always skip one thing, and it was
That's
happens to be
okay.
in today.
That's okay. And Mr. Holtz usually comes to us around this time, gives us an update on the high school academic reports. So that's what he's here to do today. You also have copies of this presentation, so it should be right in front of you. So, Mr. Holtz,
Sure.
it's all yours.
I'd like to officially, though, before I get started, embarrass Ms. Gillespie by wishing her a happy birthday. For those that aren't aware, it's
hard
not
to
like
notice,
it's in
I
our
know.
face. So, thank you for having me this evening. We'll be talking a little bit about our SAT scores, our AP scores, and then college and where our kids are headed off to. So I think you guys have the presentations with you. I'll take questions at the end if that's okay with everybody. We'll try and get through the presentation first. So this slide here that you're looking at is just comparing our performance last year on the SAT. So that was our juniors last year, our current seniors, and how they compare to the state. We'll have a couple other comparisons in a minute, but basically from here you can see that we're kind of hovering around where the state average is. A couple of notes there that are worth talking about is that the state in every category dropped a little bit from the year before. And a highlight is that mean score of a 500 for our math department and our students in the math test is the highest that we've had in 5 years. So kudos to the kids and to our department for getting that achievement. The one thing I do want to mention too, and we can kind of reference back to this on the next couple slides, when people look at the ERW, so that's evidence-based reading and writing, or the English section, and they see that 62% of our students are meeting the benchmark, and then when you look at the math and you see that 37% are meeting the benchmark, some may think that, you know, we're that weak in math or our department's not doing what they're supposed to do. Really, a lot of that comes down to the fact that the College Board has a different level for the benchmark in ERW and a different benchmark for math. So the juniors taking the SAT last year, the benchmark for ERW, they had to have a 480 or higher. For the math, they had to have a 530 or higher. That's a benchmark that we've been dealing with for the last couple of years, and it's tied to the success that they should have in a first-year college course of similar material. So that's why you see the discrepancy, though, between the ERW and the math. The benchmarks are 50-point difference, and it shows all the way across the board with the state, regardless of the school. So now we've had 3 years of experience with the state-based SAT, where all students in the junior class have to take the test. So every year here we've been able to kind of add, and kind of show some growth or where we're going. So the top ones, our ERW or our English scores have been pretty steady over the last 3 years. We were hoping to get a little bit more out of the percent benchmark. We are pleased that it didn't go backwards, but I was looking at, when we did some estimations, we were thinking we were about 65%. So we lost a little ground from what we had hoped, but we're, again, staying steady. Our math department, again, you can see that the mean score has been going up over the last 3 years. And while the benchmark slipped a little bit, it's still higher than where we were 2 years ago. And like I said, the state had also dropped. So it wasn't like we were an anomaly in that we slipped off of that. So this slide here, we are grateful for the fact that the Board of Ed has supported us in providing the PSAT 8-9 and the PSAT 10-11 opportunities in the fall for our students. In fact, they just did that today. And so since we've had that support for the last couple of years, we're able to track some of the students over the time. And one of the pieces that's interested in looking at is how our juniors did last year in October on the PSAT and how they did last year in April on the SAT. So when you're looking at the ERW, Again, really that's pretty much steady. It's expected normal growth. When you look at the different benchmarks that the College Board has for the PSATs based on grade level, basically from junior year PSAT to junior year SAT, they're looking at about a 20-point growth. The benchmark's a 460 instead of a 480. So our students were able to make an average year's worth of growth, and the number of students or the percent of students that hit the benchmark stayed basically the same. When you look at the math, though, we had quite a bit of a jump there. So when you're looking at the fact that our students had a mean score of 466 in the fall, and if you consider a 20-point jump, which is what College Board is kind of looking for, our kids far exceeded that by hitting that 500 mark. Likewise, we had quite a few more students end up hitting the benchmark, so it was always nice to see an 8% jump on something like that. So that's our SAT stuff. We'll talk a little bit about AP. And I want you to pay attention carefully because I'm going to hit you up for something at the end of this. So our AP program is something that I think we should all be very proud of. It has grown tremendously over the last couple of years in terms of offerings and students and seats. And if you were to just jump very quickly, but I'll go through the whole thing in a minute. If you jump very quickly to the very bottom column there, you can see that we had quite a bit of growth in terms of student performance. So let's talk about what each of those columns represents. The number enrolled in AP courses is basically total number of seats of an AP course taken up. So out of our 8 AP courses, 7 last year, we had 189 seats taken up. Now, of that 189, we had 93 unique students. That's what that second column represents. So we had 93 students taking an AP course, many of them taking 2, 3, and some of them crazy enough to even take 4 AP courses. So out of the 189 kind of overall students, we had 175 tests taken, which is almost double what we had the year before. And then so we had 46 students hit a 3 or above, which is kind of what the College Board ranks as a passing score. And so therefore we had about 50% of our students hitting a 3 or above on at least one test. We have added our AP Government class this year. Thank you for the support on that. It's primarily a sophomore class, although we do have some juniors and seniors who are a little upset that they would have missed that opportunity, so we've opened that up to them as well. So if you want to look at the very bottom there, currently when I ran this report, or when I created it a couple weeks ago, we had 252, what I kind of call butts in seats, students taking AP courses, 134 unique students, and that represents a third of our student body right now taking an AP course. The piece that I'm really proud about with this is that our AP program and all the teachers that have taught it, we have the philosophy that it is a fantastic opportunity for our students. It prepares them unlike any other coursework. And so while we want to see the performance on the test, we're not vetting the process to the point where we're closing the door on students. We'd rather those students that want to work and have that opportunity to be able to do so. And so even though we've opened up our doors and had a tremendous number of students start walking through it, we still saw some growth in our performance this past year. So very proud of our students, very proud of our teachers. And the thing that I want to hit you up for is that we want AP Computer Science next year. We had a little presentation in our Student Achievement Committee earlier this evening. And so when it comes time for budget, we're going to need a little bit of support. We're not looking for a crazy amount, but hoping that you guys see all the hard work that our kids and our teachers are putting into this program, and will continue to support us on that. So that would give us our 9th AP course in a small school. So something I think we should all be very proud of. And so here we have, over the last 5 years, where our graduating class is kind of heading off to. The bottom 4, if I'm counting right, the bottom 4 or so columns have been pretty steady over the last 5 years, nothing drastically different. The top 2 columns have kind of fluctuated up and down over the last couple of years. As a whole, they've always averaged somewhere in the 80 to 90%. But this class was very similar to the class of 2016, where about a third of the class was looking to go off to a community college or a 2-year school to get started, and about half the class was going off to a 4-year school. Again, the benefit of community college The rates are drastically lower than even going to Central or Southern. And 6-7 years ago, the community colleges and the state schools started to communicate. And so basically every credit that you take at a community college will now transfer. So it makes a lot of economic sense for kids. I could go to Naugatuck or Tunxus for a couple years and transfer to UConn or Southern or Central, and then I graduate with a diploma from UConn, Southern, or Central. So I think that's why we kind of see the ebbs and flows in that. And the community college is a great program. We certainly want our students to extend as far as they can, but there's nothing wrong with trying to leave with little or no debt after college too. So I think that's why we see the numbers that we see there. All right, so what we're working on this year, I wanted to just kind of highlight a couple of key things. We are working on what we call leverage points right now. It's something that our school improvement team developed last year through some research and talking with another district and just kind of looking at our own practices. And so we've basically come up with 4 key areas that we're looking at. We're sharing this with the teachers. It's going to help drive in terms of our PD and some of the instructional talk that we have. So the work that Mr. Vigliotti and I are doing around it, though, we have set up a guide where we're going into classrooms on average about 10-12 times a week, looking for specific data points and kind of keeping track of that. It's going to help us in terms of what trends we're seeing instructionally and how we need to derive our professional development. And so our goal this year is about 500 observations with those data points. We don't have a lot of PD opportunity this year because of the last bullet down there. But we're using this as kind of a baseline and just trying to figure out really what direction we need to start working on next year. Kind of aligned with that, we're taking a little page out of the district data team's book. We've been doing instructional rounds throughout the district to where the district data team will go to different schools and spend an entire day. We're going to do like an abbreviated version of that, December 13th and I think March 28th. That process is going to allow us to get about half of our teachers into other teachers' classrooms to be able to observe and take note of what's going on. And again, it just continues the structure of talking instructionally. We also are in our first year of the grading policy, which we had presented to the SAC last year, really focusing on 2 different categories of practice and performance. And again, the idea behind that is to promote the learning process and also to try and have grades a little bit more representative of what kids know and what they can do. And then the last piece that we have up here is our NEAS self-study. We have a visit coming next fall in October of 2019. NEASC is New England Association of Schools and Colleges. I think I have that all right.
Yep.
And so they come through every 10 years. It's quite a daunting process. Next fall will be the easy part. But this year our teachers and staff are fully embedded in doing what they call self-study. It is a lengthy process that looks at 7 different standards, including curriculum instruction and assessment. It also looks at leadership and then town and school community resources. So while we don't have a ton of time for the PD that we've been trying to do, the self-study itself is quite a PD all of its own because you're just digging so deep into the workings of your school and what makes you run. So those are really our big focuses this year, and we're hoping that we continue to see the growth in some of our SAT and AP scores because of the work that our staff is doing. And that's all I have, unless there are some questions.
Any questions? Desire?
Don't some AP exams, at least it was when I was in high school, require a score of 4 or 5 to pass, or are they all 3 now?
So College Board considers, so most of that chart that you're looking at on that is basically right from a report that College Board puts out. So they still utilize the score of 3 or above considered on their end of passing. You were absolutely correct, though. Schools like Central, Southern, almost across the board are looking for 4s and 5s. It depends on the test. So each school and each test is a little bit different. But the 4 and the 5 is more of the standard now. There are still a couple subjects in some schools that are looking at the 3s. But again, the College Board uses the 3, which is why we reference it in this.
Do you have any idea how these numbers would change if the question was not percentage of AP students with scores of 3+, but percentage of AP students with passing scores?
I don't have it off on me. It is a report that I've shared with Dr. Semmel. We've reviewed that. I mean, it drops a little bit as it would across the state and the country. So I could certainly get that to you, just not right now.
I mean, not all schools accept them anyway. Some do and some don't. Or
Except what?
like if you take an AP course in high school, your school may not necessarily accept it no matter what you get on. So.
Well, for instance, we have 2 AP English classes. We have the Lit and we have the Lang, and a lot of schools will only take one of those 2.
Right.
So you could have a student that takes both, and depending on the college, they may only take or give credit for the one. So that certainly is a bonus, getting the credit. I've always been under the philosophy one of the best courses I ever took in my entire college, or high school and college career was an AP Calc class, and it just prepared me like nothing else. I felt like all my college courses were relatively easy compared to the torture that my calc teacher put me through. And I think it's because of what I had to learn and grow during that year. So, and I've talked to these guys about that too. So
AP Lit was definitely my most valuable class from high school too.
Yeah.
So yeah.
A lot of reading.
And Allison feels that her class that prepared her best was AP US History. So she said, I can do anything after that.
Yep.
Jerry?
Ms. Holtz, I just have 2 questions.
Sure.
On the 252 students, what's the consensus? That's freshmen, sophomores, juniors, seniors? I don't know I know I can't say when I was in high school, we didn't have AP courses in high school. But I was always under the impression that usually AP courses were taken by technically seniors, so they could get at least some semblance of what college courses would be like.
So we have our AP Government now, which is primarily sophomores and will primarily be sophomores. Also in the Social Studies Department, we have U.S. History, which is primarily juniors, and then we have AP Psychology, which is mostly seniors. When you look at the Math Department, our AP Stat is junior, senior. We've seen more and more juniors take it, and then they take the Calc as a senior. Calc is almost strictly just senior, based on needing the progression of Algebra 2 and Pre-Calc. We have 2 different AP English classes, one's junior, one's senior. And then we have AP Bio, which for the longest time here was it was a senior course. A couple years ago, we opened it up to some juniors and sophomores as well, and they actually knocked it out of the park. So we've been keeping that open to a handful of sophomores and juniors.
Okay, so you're starting these kids progressively at a younger age to get themselves into focus of what's going to entail.
It's mostly been starting at the junior year. We're really excited about the AP Gov because of the sophomore offering, and we have our Teacher of the Year, Mr. Schumann, teaching it. And so we feel like that experience at that younger age and the understanding of what it takes in terms of the writing aspect of it, I think is certainly going to carry over, and the rest of our departments will take some dividends from that.
Okay. Now my other question is, if you go to the second to the last page, where you have graduate attending vocational and technical schools.
Yep.
All right. I would probably safe to assume in this economic conditions that might be an area that you may want to highlight for those students that technically don't want to go to a community college to learn about English, math, science all over again, because the machine shops in this area are grossly underemployed. And those kids, if they go to the Naugatuck Community College, into that machine tool program, it's a 2-year program, and I do believe they get technically like a certificate of attendance. They also will be put in with manufacturers so they can start on their internships. I do believe in manufacturing you have to get, I think, 7,000 hours of internship before you technically are quote-unquote a machinist. Once you get those 7,000 hours, you're making somewhere between $30 and $40 an hour, depending on the machine shop. And you can look in the Hartford Courant just about any type of Sunday, and all the aerospace industries in this state are looking for people. So I think in the best interest of yourself and, the school system is start looking at some of the kids who you feel would be, here's 2 years of school, you get hands-on experience. You don't have to worry about math and English and sciences. They'll teach you, they'll put you in. Business people will come in. They might offer you a job the minute you get out.
I couldn't agree with you more. Coming from a father who raised 2 boys, working with his hands in a factory for his entire life, and putting myself through college in the early part of my teaching career, swinging hammers, I have quite an affinity for the trades. I don't believe college is for everyone, nor should it have to be. I think you got to think about what your passion is and what you're interested in. I think unfortunately a lot of our kids are societally pushed that college is the route and that's the only route, and so I think we have a lot that do go off to the community college and then kind of find some other way. At the same point, some of the community colleges have some great tech programs as well. I know 4 or 5 years ago, Naugatuck had a pretty decent automotive program going.
Right.
We have students that are in our Bristol Tech program now. We have maybe about 8 or 10 kids that are juniors, seniors going to Bristol Tech, and they're able to take that and start getting a certificate and moving into the employment too. So I agree with you wholeheartedly. It is a conversation that I personally have with some students that I'm close with, and kind of when we talk about what direction they want to go. And so, to me, and even when I'm raising my own 2 kids, I don't really care what direction they go, as long as they get a piece of paper that says that they're capable of doing something, and it's something they want to work hard towards. For many, that is college, and that's fantastic, but I see nothing wrong whatsoever with going into the trades. And like you had mentioned, I have some older friends, well, like 50,
That old?
who are much in the trades, and they have some businesses in Bristol, and they really struggle to find some young talent that are willing to work and be trained. So
No, I think
I
what you
know
should
that I know that's an area of need, and I know I certainly know what they can make. I have a much younger brother who works with his hands and does pretty darn well.
Right. Well, if you have friends in the industry, then maybe what you do is maybe reach out to them and come up here, and when you have
One of
like
our former graduates from the class of 28 is working with one of my friends right
yeah,
now.
I'm just saying, you could, usually have like a college prep night for all the kids that are looking. Maybe you can have a technical prep night for some of these
And our
kids
tech
that are
ed
kind
teacher,
of...
Mr. Fuller, has talked about doing just that.
Right, and just get these kids to understand that. And believe me, my dad worked to tool and die all his life. When I came into college to go, you're not working a tool and die shop because of how bad it was with all oil and stuff like that. You go to a tool and die shop now, it's like that floor right there. You can eat off of it.
I wouldn't eat off that.
Well, I'm just... But
They
that's
do a great
what
job cleaning it, but I see 400
But
kids.
that's the way
I
the
get it.
floor, that's the way the floor looks like
Yep.
in a tool and die shop. Because everything's
Precision.
CNC.
Yep.
Okay? So, and these kids, opportunity, you can go to college and come out making 60 grand. You can go to 2 years at Naugatuck Valley, and you'll be making 60 grand once you get through your internship.
Yep.
And you won't be working you'll be working Monday through Friday. And your boss isn't going to be calling you at 3 o'clock in the morning saying, hey, how come you don't have this email that I sent to you, and there's no reply.
And sometimes people are surprising when they go to technical schools, right, Mr. Holtz?
That is true.
Think you're going one way, they go another. So just going off that, even Tungsas has an engineering, so you can do both. But
Well, in all honesty, I think it's an untapped resource right now for these kids, and the kids don't get it, I mean, my parents were, you have to go to college. My kids, you have to go to college. A lot of them don't want to go to college anymore. They want to get what my dad used to do.
any other questions or comments for Mr. Holtz? Thank you.
All right, well,
Sorry I
thank
almost
you.
missed you.
And don't forget the AP Computer Science. I'll be bugging you in another month.
Are you going to wait to hear if we vote on it, what the answer is, before you leave tonight?
We'll see.
All right, I guess now it's your turn.
Yes, now it's my turn. So first, I want to say thank you to Ms. Erickson and Ms. Gutierrez for coming up and sharing their Costa Rica trip, and Mr. Perkins for bringing forward the New York trip, and I appreciate Mr. Holtz coming up and sharing all the good stuff that's going on at the high school level, and I think he did a great job sharing that information in a nice, concise manner for you. On a little bit less exciting note, I wanted to mention to the full board and folks, we do have some work being done on the high school sidewalk in the near future. We're expecting that by the end of October, we're hoping, as long as the weather holds out, that we'll finish the work that we started in terms of patching and overlaying and protecting the sidewalk out there from further damage. But I am also very appreciative that the board sees the wisdom in offering the trips that we offer to our students, because as you heard Christine talk about, there's some great opportunities out there and opening their eyes. I know Diana has gone on trips, and lots of other kids have gone on trips, and when they come back, it's almost like they're different people in some ways. So folks like Ms. Erickson, who it takes a lot to put these trips together, it really does, and they put themselves out there, and I doubt it's a relaxing trip. I think she enjoys it, but I don't know that the word relaxing is the right word, right? So I really appreciate the fact that she and the folks she takes with her to advise on these trips and make sure our kids get the most out of it. It's just awesome that we have folks who are willing to give of themselves like that. So that's all I have for an update today.
Wow.
Yep.
Okay. Any comments? All right. So we're going to go to the students. Ms. Dane.
Okay, so on October 20th, the Leos are going to be helping the Lions to put on their annual Halloween event at the Terryville Fairgrounds from 6 to 8:30. And it's open to families and mostly geared towards children, and there are games and there's food and there's different competitions and stuff. And so we welcome everyone to come. It's a Saturday. I'll be in a costume. Little Devin. That's wonderful. Also, the week of October 22nd to the 26th is our Red Ribbon Week. And it's a week where we emphasize the prevention of drug and alcohol abuse in our community, which is something that we also actively fight to prevent in our school and our community. So that's just kind of a week where we highlight it. Let's see. And then we have a couple of fundraisers. So let's see. The class of 2022 is selling Java Joe's Coffee and Fudge. The PTSA is doing a mixed bag fundraiser. The class of 2019 is doing a Yankee Candle fundraiser. And there's a fundraiser at Roller Magic on October 25th from 6 to 8, so you can pre-order tickets from that too. Skate around, or don't if you don't want to. I'm not a skater, so, but. And finally, there's going to be a financial aid night on October 25th at 6 p.m. to help with things like FAFSA and scholarships to help make college more affordable. And it's mainly for seniors, but juniors are welcome as well, and parents, obviously. So that's all I got.
Any questions or comments? Dad?
Me?
Is it you?
Everyone. Okay, so
I'll mix it up.
On Friday the 19th through Friday the 26th will be our Spirit Week. Friday the 19th will be a video announcing the upcoming Spirit Week, and that's where we will announce our themes. Every day we do a different theme, and it's just really a great way to show school spirit and just bring unity throughout the school. And that Friday the 26th will be the pep rally that we hold. Then girls soccer actually won against Thomaston 1-0, and that makes the record 2 wins, 6 losses, and 1 tie. Boys soccer has a record of 1 win and 8 losses. And both teams will have a night game against Thomaston October 19th here at the high school. Cross country had a meet against Wamogo and Northwestern yesterday. Girls actually do not have enough runners to place in the meet, but they still have their individual times. And Katie DeForest, which is actually a freshman, came in first. Sarah Evanowski came in 10th, and Emily Morgan came in 15th. The boys, they have the record of 3-1. Chris DeForest first, Colby Brown was 3rd, Connor Garrity is 7th, CJ Hart was 8th, and Nick Sapone was 12th yesterday. And volleyball also had a game against Gilbert, and they won, and that makes the record 4-6.
Any questions or comments? Okay, Taylor.
Today we actually had the PSATs, which I can say wasn't exactly the most enjoyable experience of my life, but I will say that I'm thankful that as a junior I was able to take it, because I didn't know last year that juniors also took it, because I'm oblivious. But it's really reassuring to have that experience, and it calms my nerves just the slightest bit for the actual SATs. So I just wanted to thank you for the opportunity to actually take that. And I also wanted to give a reminder that the Suicide Prevention Walk will be taking place on October 19th at Rockwell Park. And thankfully we already have 50 people participating in this walk. Students, parents, just a lot of teachers, everything. And lastly, our homecoming is on November 3rd, and the theme is Around the World. it's a Saturday, and it's just fun all the time. I've gone the past 2 years, and I enjoy it. So, yeah.
Any
Great.
comments, questions? Thank you, ladies. Okay, first public comment. Come to the podium, 3 minutes. Name, address. Let's go. Come on, Danny. Let's go.
I'm overdue. Dan Gentile, 269 Mount Hope Road, Town Council Liaison also. I'm so happy that I heard talk about the AP courses. I remember for years and years and years, we would put gifted and talented, and guess what the first thing was to be cut? We used to like throw $50,000, and when it was thrown back to the board, bingo. So I don't know how you guys are going to vote, but I hope you support the gifted and talented kids, because they achieve without as much help. So it'd be a great thing to show them that the board does support what they do, because we've tried for numerous years. Next thing I'm going to bring up is something that's near and dear to my heart, and I keep bringing it up: unfunded mandates. Always got to keep that in the back of your mind, guys, and I will keep reminding you. I know if Mr. Penn, I don't know if you want to make a committee or whatever you guys could do. Phil had I think he 365-ish unfunded mandates that you guys, that boards of eds have to deal with. So it'd be something to keep in mind, because like we were talking upstairs funding, pick at them one at a time, or make a committee. And I'd love to see something done, because I've been barking up that tree 20 years, and we haven't even got to the point where you have a committee that looks at it. So that's my 2.5 minute stance. Thank you.
Anybody else? Going once, going twice? Okay, moving on to the consent agenda. Can I have a motion to approve?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Melissa, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you. I'm just writing myself a note. Give me a
Yep,
second.
absolutely.
All right, under new business.
Yeah, I'll take this to start. Okay. So under new business, the first thing we have is a capital improvement plan. Mr. Hendrickson started working on a capital improvement plan with Mr. Mazon about a month and a half ago, 2 months ago or so, just really trying to identify items that we needed to work on in terms of our facilities, inside and outside, for this current year, next year, and we're working on a plan that will bring us through 5 years. At the same time this year, we were requested by the Capital Improvement Commission to send them items that we would like to see added to a capital improvement plan for the town. So what we'd like to do, and you guys received this via email from me, but then also in your packet, we have the capital improvement plan that we've been putting together and has been spoken about at the Finance and Operations Committee. We'd like to bring that forward to the full board for consideration this evening, so that we can provide our items to the Capital Improvement Commission of the town, so that we can have our items considered. So I know there was some work done at Finance and Operations, and I think Ms. Kalesa has some additional information.
Yes, I have a motion from committee to approve the capital improvement plan as discussed in the Finance and Operations Subcommittee.
Coming from committee does not need a second, so we'll go right into discussion.
Everybody received it in their packet, so.
Are we good? Yeah. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Greg, any abstentions? Motion is passed.
Greg did, yep. So the next steps, just so you know, is I'll be forwarding that to Mr. Wiegert, who was asked by the commission to collect everything from department heads. So I'll send especially our 1920 list to the Capital Improvement Commission's group, specifically Mr. Wiegert, so that we can get those forwarded. I don't know exactly what next steps happen, but I'll make sure we stay on top of that. So thank you. Yeah, so I want to get to the next page. So the next item is the ED 099, another state form around, you guessed it, food. So this one's an agreement for child nutrition programs, and I asked Mr. Hendrickson to make sure that he explained to the board how this particular document that we need to sign for the state is different than the other documents we had to sign for the state.
I received a memo from the state in mid-September, and it issued a permanent single agreement to participate in the child nutrition program. Prior to this, each year we had to exercise or have a vote on the ED 099. Now the state evidently has to recraft it to adhere to USDA requirements. This is quite similar to what happened a couple of years ago when half the state had to redo their food service contracts because the state wasn't in alignment with the federal government. And ironically, I got notified of this just prior to the September board meeting, and I have to have it into the state a day after the November board meeting, so we have to vote tonight. But by signing this, this allows us to make claims for a free and reduced lunch, and those are integral to our food service program.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the ED 099 agreement for child nutrition programs, and 1, to authorize the superintendent to sign this agreement and to sign claims for reimbursement, and 2, to authorize the school business manager in the absence or incapacity of the superintendent to sign claims for reimbursement.
Motion's on the floor. Karen, can I have a second?
I'll second.
Dick? Any discussion?
So this is the document we signed that allows us to be a part of the free and reduced lunch program.
That is, the free and reduced lunch program is part of that agreement, yes.
What else is?
Well, the commodities agreement that we get from the federal government as well.
As in, we got to follow certain standards and all that?
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
Anything else? Great.
How long is this going to be federally funded?
How long is it going to be federally funded?
In other words, are we going to have to pick it up if the feds drop it?
Well, it's been federally funded for
Yeah, a
a
long time.
long
many,
time.
many decades.
Just asking, with the president, you never know.
I would say if they ever removed funds, this group would have an opportunity to have a conversation about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
If they remove the funds, they would also remove the requirements that we would have to go with them.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
I guess so.
And I think a lot of school districts, not only our own, would be very upset.
Yeah. Yeah.
We wouldn't be the only one.
Right.
Any other questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you. Passed. Okay. We're going on to committee reports, so finance and operations. Karen?
Okay, the Finance Operations Committee met prior to this meeting, and we had quite a lengthy discussion about several things. We do have the accounts by facility report for the month of September 2018 will be forwarded to the Town of Plymouth Board of Finance. We took care, oh no, never mind, hold on a second. Okay, so our next item is the unspent encumbrances. So we did have some money that we believe is going to be, well, we know is going to be unspent, that we would like to put into our sinking fund. So I do have a motion out of committee to approve, to forward to the full board for approval unspent encumbrances in the amount of $46,686.75 to be deposited into our sinking fund.
Coming from committee does not need a second. We can go right into discussion.
Just so everybody knows, I asked the question concerning, can we take that money and put that into this year's budget? And unfortunately, we can't because that's from last year's budget. So that's why you need to take that money and put it into the sinking fund.
Thank you for the clarification.
Yep. Important.
Anything else? Okay. Is this the roll call vote?
No.
Is it? No, it's not. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, so moved.
Just so you know, what we'll be doing from that point is Mr. Hendrickson and I will go to meet with the Board of Finance as long as they put us on the agenda. I've already requested that they put us on the agenda, and we'll make the pitch to have that money moved into our sinking fund. So we'll report back.
Before we go on, it is a roll call vote, so I need to go back and do a roll call vote. I apologize. So,
Okay.
Greg,
Aye.
Jerry,
Yes?
Dick,
Yes.
Josiah,
Aye.
Melissa,
Yes.
Cindy,
Yes.
Michelle.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. I apologize
Sorry
for that.
about that.
That's okay. It was me. I was looking.
Okay, and the Finance and Operations Committee has one more item that we need to bring forward. There was a discussion under the personnel report about hiring a additional teacher for second grade at Plymouth Center School to alleviate the large class size, and one of our members of our board brought that forward as a motion, and it was seconded and it was voted on, and we are bringing it forward to the full board as a motion to hire a second grade teacher at Plymouth Center School to alleviate class size.
Coming out of committee does not need a second, so we go right into discussion. Anybody have any discussion or comments?
Okay, just to let everybody know, I'm the person that made the motion. I have concerns about what's going on at Plymouth Center with the second grade class, with having 27 kids in that class. And I'm looking at it, and as I explained to everybody on the committee, I'm looking at it as a management standpoint. All right? When you have 27 employees all in the same room, as a manager, it's very hard to manage 27 people at the same time, especially adults. When you start looking at little kids who are 7 years old, their attention span isn't as great as an adult. When you go into management classes in college, they will tell you that in an 8-hour span, you only can deal with people, approximately 5 to 8 people per day in a given situation, to either talk to or listen to some of their concerns or issues. When you start looking at a teacher who has to deal with 27 little kids that have not really concerns and/or issues, but it becomes a time management problem for that individual. I understand that some of this has to do with budget reasons, and unfortunately, where do you put dollars and cents in front of kids? And that's the reason why I brought this up. And the concern from some of the members was we're setting precedent. And I understand we're setting precedent, but we also have to understand too that this is about kids, okay? Sometimes you have to bite the bullet when you have to spend money, and you don't want to spend it foolishly, and I don't think we're spending money foolishly to bring in a teacher. Because if you look at the scenario, if this second grade class has 27 kids in it, next year there will be 27 kids in that third grade class, and there will be only one teacher. When they get to the fourth grade, there'll be one teacher. When they get to the fifth grade, there'll be one teacher. So from the time that these kids start in second grade, if you look at the progression, the way it is now, they will only have one teacher at that point in time if we're in the same budget. Also, what really irritates me too is that we gave back $1.1 million to this town to offset costs that Governor Malloy told us we couldn't have money. All right? And that money, taking that $1.1 million that we helped the town out because Governor Malloy decided to cut us $1.4 million, all right, really hurt us educationally. It hurt us in the elementary school. It's hurting us in the middle school. All right? It's also hurting us in programs that we cannot institute here because of that $1.4 million that Governor Molay covers. All right, so I proactively put this out there and just want to have a discussion amongst the board members on where people feel.
One of the concerns that came up was that if we were to hire this teacher, the money would have to come from somewhere within our budget. It's not like we can go to the town and say, we need more money in our budget because we're going to hire another teacher. Our budget is set, so that money would come from another department, just so that everyone understands that clearly. And it's not just a teacher's salary that we're talking about, it would also be benefits as well. Another concern that came up was also that the first grades also have large class sizes, and if we decide to hire a second grade teacher, will we then be sort of in a position where we also have to hire a first grade teacher, because why wouldn't we if we did it for second grade? So just so you're clear on where the discussion went upstairs, it's not as simple as saying we're just going to hire these teachers and we're just going to get the money from somewhere. The money would literally have to come out of other departments to pay for this new expenditure. Just so everyone understands that.
I have a question. Sure. Dr. Semmel, I know that you gave parents the choice of sending their students to Fisher. Did anybody take you up on that offer?
No.
So parents are fully aware of the situation. No one has chosen to move their children to smaller classes, correct?
Correct.
And where are we with the tutors?
The tutors, Ms. Collins, I believe, interviewed somebody either today or yesterday. Today? Yesterday, and made an offer. So I think she was still waiting today to hear back from that particular person. So as long as that person is positive on being able to start, we would get that person vetted through the whole background check quickly, and we get them started as soon as possible.
I have one more question. Okay. In the recent past, have there been classes this large?
In 15-16, there were classes of 29 and 28 at Fisher Elementary School. In grade 2 or 3. I think it was 3. In grade 3. We've had other classes that are at 25 and 26 I think it was at Fisher again in grade 4 or 5, and that was a couple of years ago as well.
And you're speaking to K-5 classes?
K-5, yeah. Yeah, so I'm only speaking K-5 when you ask that question. We do currently have some middle school classes that are, and even a couple of high school classes that are at the 30 level.
Okay.
Yeah, the middle school has a very large 7th grade currently, so they're dealing with larger class sizes this year.
I think that was something else that was brought up as well, was that we're looking at the potential of having, because the middle school will only be getting bigger next year, we're looking at the potential to possibly having to add some staff to the middle school in our next year's budget. So, that this would be something additional to that, because this, would stay in our budget if we were to vote on it now.
During your committee discussion, was there any discussion around where the funds would actually come from for an added teacher?
Not in specifics, no, because it wasn't something we prepared for.
My concern was if we do for one, we've got to do for others. In the high school, if you have 23 or 24 axe murderers in a freshman in a class, and I've been in them, so I know whereof I speak.
You mean that in a loving way, though?
Yes, I do.
I know
but,
you do.
It's talk about management skills. It's tough. And that teacher is going to want relief as well, and I just don't know where it's coming from.
Well, at some point in time, you got to start somewhere. There has to be a starting point. It's like in a race. You all start at one point, and you try to finish at the end. We can't start here and then start there. There's got to be a starting point where we as a board...
I totally agree with you, and I believe that starting point is at the budget for next year, and garnering support from the people who are voting on the budget to demand from the town council and demand from the Board of Finance that those funds are put back in. But we just don't get that support, unfortunately. And I hope we do. I 100% hope we do. I hope we have people knocking on Danny's door saying, don't you dare cut the Board of Ed budget again. That's what I hope. I really do. But I think I do believe that's where it has to start. We can't start in the middle of the year taking money from other departments to pay for it.
No, personally, I disagree with you.
Yeah, of course.
You know, and just from a business standpoint, and I know where you're coming from, Karen,
Yep.
but in my 20 years of management experience, when I ran into a problem halfway through the budget, my boss didn't care. Fix it.
By spending more money?
Nope, either by spending money or allocating funds that needed to coincide so that at the end of the year, when his bosses look at him, his fund to his budget is okay. All right, and you know, and I've had it where I've had regional managers come up to me and tell me that you're 4 hours over your allocated budget. And when I've asked them, how much is sales, they tell me sales are up 10%. Okay, and I look at them and say, well, I'm only 4 hours over, and I'm 10% over budget. Okay, I get it, Karen.
Right, because we can't go over budget.
I understand we can't go over budget. I
can't.
get it, Karen, okay? I'm just trying to at least put forth a discussion so that we all know that we as a board can, all the people that are out there who are watching this, or people who happen to may come up to you and ask you, you know, what's going on, at least we're having a discussion about it. We're not just burying our hands in the sand, heads in the sand, and not waiting till next year.
Right.
Okay?
Okay.
Let's put the discussion out there, and if it works, it works. If it doesn't, we tried. You know?
Josiah?
Just to be clear, is there a motion item on the floor to add a teacher?
On the floor.
All right.
Yes.
Just making sure. Can you actually read the motion as it?
The motion is to hire a second grade teacher at Plymouth Center School to alleviate the large class size that there is there.
And I just want to be clear about this. You were talking about how if the class goes on to third grade, then that's also, well, whoever was talking about, that's also going to be a big class. Wouldn't the second grade teacher stay with the second grade? Or would she move on to teach them in third grade?
That would depend on the teacher's qualifications and their ability to do so, their desire to do so.
Okay.
It would depend on a lot of different things.
And okay, I think the thing I consider most when I'm thinking about something like this is what are the options that a parent has if a class is too full. I know we had somebody come in and make public comment. What are you guys thinking about the class size? And what we did, what you did, if I'm correct, is you said, all right, you don't have to send them there anymore. We're broadening your opportunity, and you can go to the Fisher class instead. What is the Fisher class size?
Between
definitely
16 and 18.
That's I just want to
no
misspeak.
transportation
Yeah.
provided to that family. So if you have working parents that can't commit to getting the child to and from school without transportation, whether they don't have transportation or whatever.
Yeah, that's fair. That's a
And the
fair
scores
concern
for
that some
school
parents
are
have
very
had.
different as well. Fisher scores are much lower than Plymouth Center scores.
I actually sympathize with both of those are good points. For the latter one, I would almost say that's a huge, a big discussion for a different day, the discrepancies in school scores. And I can understand why a parent wouldn't want to send their kid to one school or the other. What I would say as a parent, I'm all about parent choice in this type of thing. And if a parent, they generally still have a choice. They have a choice of one school, and it's Plymouth Center. They have a choice of another school in Fisher, is what you're giving them here. Whether that's with or without, they got to deal with transportation and scores and all that. You're all making such good points. I'm pretty sympathetic to the idea that it's budget time that we discuss this type of thing. However, and I apologize if I'm rambling or verbally
No, you're processing it.
fixing my thoughts while I'm talking. But Jerry also makes a good point that if something's an issue, we got to fix it. I don't know if this is a long-term fix. You're making an interesting argument. You're saying if there's a problem, we shouldn't push it down the road. How doesn't this push the problem down the road? I'm honestly explain to me how it wouldn't push the problem down the road. Because they keep going further and further in school, and if they hit middle school and high school and whatever, we would eventually have to hire more teachers, right?
Well, the position would be opened. A teaching position would be opened, and that teacher would be assigned to second grade. If that was the only teacher we ended up hiring, then at the end of the year, that teacher, that position, not the teacher, but that position may be closed due to not needing it, and a position may open in third grade. And whether that teacher takes that position, that specific individual takes that position or not, would be up to many different factors. But the position itself would still be open. But it may be moved at the discretion of the building principal or the superintendent or whoever would be in charge of that assignment. So if all things were equal, let's say that the second grade was the only larger class in that school. It's not. There's 2 first grade classes that are nearly as large. So that's the issue. That's one of the issues we're worried about, is that if we hire another for second grade, we may have to hire another for first grade as well. Now we're looking at 2 teaching positions that we have to pay out of our budget that we don't have allocated funds for. So does that clarify it a little bit? Okay.
It does. I'll say I'm very glad that this discussion was brought up. In the end, I'm more sympathetic to the idea that you gave the parents choices, and they're tough choices, and parents sometimes have to make tough choices, especially in the great economic state that Connecticut is in right now. So, yeah, please continue talking.
Can I just add one more piece?
Yes.
In terms of how this rolls down the future, so we're talking currently about the current situation as it is. When we're looking at the budget for 1920, that'll be another opportunity to talk about, well, how would we like to allocate our funds, and what does the request look like going to the Board of Finance and Town Council? One thing to keep in mind is that the current 5th graders at Plymouth Center School have three teachers there. There's 3 5th grade teachers, and next year there will not be a need for 3 5th grade teachers. The numbers in 4th grade just don't support having, they only have 2 teachers in 4th grade now. They won't need 3 teachers in 5th grade. So there will be that section that will become available, if you will. There'll be a teacher who is teaching 5th grade, where the board will certainly make some recommendations about what to do with that particular staff member, but the board could utilize that particular position in some way. It could be used at Plymouth Center for what would then be the 3rd graders. It could be used at Eli Terry as a position to help again, because I've mentioned that Eli Terry is going to be at the biggest it's going to be next year, and only for that 1 year, then I think it's going to be in the next 10 years. So the board will have to decide where these positions will go. You may also decide to add other positions. That's all during that budget discussion. So in terms of when this could also be fixed is as we look at the 1920 budget piece. But the fact that you probably wouldn't know that there's an extra 5th grade teacher right now that won't be needed for next year and can be freed up helps. It helps.
I have a further question that I kind of just thought of as we were talking. So this is very thought-provoking, so it's good that we are having this discussion. If we were to vote yes to hire a new teacher for that specific grade, what would then become of the position we've already voted on in the tutoring category? Because, I mean, we've already offered that position, so, you know, I wouldn't imagine we could just take it away.
Well, what I believe we would do, if you voted to add the 2nd grade teacher, I would likely look at having that tutor just support the 2 1st grade classrooms.
Okay.
So they would end up supporting the 1st grade classrooms. I'd want to work with Ms. Parsons on that and Ms. Collins. But instead of getting whatever number of hours of support they were going to get in our current idea, they'd get a little bit more time.
Right, okay.
So the 1st grade teachers would still benefit from having that position.
Right, okay.
But it would be that cost plus the teacher cost.
Right.
Karen, I would probably safe to assume that tutor position, instead of being split 3 ways, will now be split 2.
Well, that's exactly what he just said.
That's right. You know, so that.
Right.
which would probably benefit those 2 first-grade teachers.
Absolutely.
Because they could get an additional hour or 2 of that tutor. So there are pros and cons, there are benefits, there are non-benefits. Just depends on how you want to weigh, you know?
And then I just want to say to Josiah, as far as parents making choices, some of these second graders have been at Plymouth Center for 5 years if they started the preschool. And whether everyone has a choice to go to a magnet school, to go to any other school, but to tell a parent to make a decision that for a smaller class size, when that student has been in that school for 2, 3, 5 years, it's not apples and apples. It's apples and oranges. The offer was put out there if anybody maybe wanted to be in the Fisher district, but these children and these parents are in the Plymouth district, and their students should have their rights to pick which school that they want to stay in.
If they were part of the Board of Education preschool, they were not at Plymouth Center those years. Plymouth Center's only had our preschool for 2 years. So if they attended Head Start or one of the other programs, possibly, but to have attended a Plymouth Public Schools preschool, they would have been at Fisher for 2 years and moved over. So they would not have been at Plymouth Center for 5 years.
Yep, my son started at Fisher for 1 year and then did 1 year at Plymouth Center.
Yeah.
So,
So, but then he wasn't part of the Plymouth Board of Ed preschool for that year, because that Plymouth Board of Ed preschool's only been at Plymouth Center for 2 years now.
yeah, my son was a part of the Plymouth Center preschool.
Just to make sure that's clear. I don't think it made it clear looking at Josiah.
Oh, okay.
It didn't, I appreciate that.
Yeah, so some of the children have had preschool, kindergarten, first, second grade, so they're 4 years into being with the same cluster of students and teachers.
They're in a community of friends. Yeah,
So,
that's.
Cindy, is your son in first grade or second grade? He's in second, so he was 1 year in Plymouth Center?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments or?
No?
I'm opening up for the vote. Okay, roll call vote. Josiah?
No.
Melissa?
No.
Cindy?
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
Karen?
No.
Greg?
No.
Jerry?
Yes.
Dick?
No.
The noes have it. Next on our agenda is student achievement. What? Oh.
No.
It's all you.
Okay.
Thank you.
The regular meeting of the Student Achievement Subcommittee on September 27th, 2018 was canceled due to a lack of quorum. However, the subcommittee held a special meeting October 10th, 2018 at 6 p.m. in the conference room of central office. The subcommittee discussed the following items: food textbooks, and I need a, do I do a motion now?
Yeah, go ahead.
And I need a motion I need a motion to approve the following textbooks for Foods 1, 2, Vocational Foods, as discussed at the Student Achievement Subcommittee, October 12, 2018.
October 10th.
10th. Okay.
It's written.
Okay. I'm sorry.
And then
Foundation of Restaurant Management and Culinary Arts, second edition, level 1, copyright 2018 by the National Restaurant Association Foundation, and Foundation of Restaurant Management and Culinary Arts, special edition, level 2, copyright 2018 by the National Restaurant Association Education Foundation.
Okay, coming on a committee does not need a second. We can go right into discussion if there is any. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you. So moved.
And we also discussed new high school courses for 2019-2020. We updated a school summer curriculum work, back to school professional learning, and end of the year summer data, and SRBI.
I don't think there was another motion at this point. Right. There was no motions coming on that second piece, just discussion at this
No,
point.
we did discuss 2 new courses, but there is no policy to approve. We were just
Okay.
looking to build consensus around
Okay.
those 2 courses.
Was one of them AP Computer Science?
AP Computer Science and a very exciting other addition, which is Fire Science at the high school.
So we should be hearing,
Yep.
okay.
Just, we want a pre-discussion before the budget process.
Okay, perfect, thank you. Policy Subcommittee, Melissa?
No report.
Okay, and then negotiations, Melissa?
An executive session will take place to review the contract between Plymouth Board of Education and the Plymouth School Administrators Association.
Thank you. Any questions? We'll be having questions soon on that. Okay, so second public comment is at 3 minutes. Name and address. Please feel free. There is a sign-up sheet, I think. Did you say?
Yep, there is a
Okay.
sign-up sheet, yeah.
Chris Seymour, Kinzer, 52 Old Farm Road. I guess it's a little bit after the fact, but I think I was a little surprised that we're talking about hiring another teacher or possibly 2 for class sizes at one school for Plymouth Center when you have class sizes at Fisher at practically half that size. I don't get it. And so I guess it doesn't seem to be much of an issue for the parents at Plymouth Center, the class sizes. I bet you if you offered to or mentioned that you were going to, lottery out 5 random kids out of Plymouth Center and move them to Fisher, I bet you get these seats filled. But I think it's ridiculous that you're talking about hiring 2 teachers to handle class sizes at one school when you have literally half the class size at the other school. And those students and if any students did decide to go to Fisher, yes, you would have to bus them there. You guys have to bus them there. So, thank you.
Any other public comment? Just put your name and address right on the sheet. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Kelly Akatura from 490 North Street. I just want to first say thank you so much for taking the time to hear my comments today. Myself and the woman that's here with me, Bernadette, we're both parents of students in the 2nd grade class at Plymouth Center School. We definitely appreciate the fact that you took the time to have this discussion tonight in regards to bringing in another teacher for the 2nd grade class. We know that the budget and understand what it's like to somewhat, in a much smaller scale, obviously, deal with budgets as we do for our own homes. And you're only allotted so much money, and it's very difficult to try to use the funds that you have as wisely as you can. So we do appreciate the fact that you guys do understand that there is a large class room that we're dealing with, and we're not talking about 17-year-olds at a high school. We are talking about 7-year-olds. So it's a much different, even comparing, 2nd graders to the middle school, there's really not much of a comparison. They're just much smaller, much more focused at times too. And we're not even just talking about students that are typical, and I apologize if that's not the correct PC word to use by saying typical, but we're not talking about just the typical students that are in the 2nd grade class at Plymouth Center. We're also discussing the fact that there's quite a few students with special needs and known behavioral issues as well. So it does give the teacher quite a challenge in trying to achieve just simple things like getting them to line up to go to their other classes, and things like today, it was picture day at the school, and I volunteered there to help out, making sure everyone looked their best, and it was quite the challenge to get the class photo with those 27 7-year-olds. It took a very long time to get everyone together and looking at that camera, but that aside, I know that it's now not something to discuss any longer in regards to getting another second grade teacher, but maybe we can consider the fact that one tutor spread out between 78 students, because that's how many are between the first and the second grade class. Maybe we consider the possibility of another tutor, so we can really maybe focus one tutor on the first grade class and their specific curriculum, and then another for the second grade class and what their specific needs are. If maybe we can consider something like that to fix the issues that we have right now. If the option obviously isn't there to hire more teachers, maybe we can consider that to help out our students. And if I can make one more quick point, my son personally has been in Plymouth Center School for 6 years. We brought him to the Learn Together group, my husband and I, in Mrs. Hale's class when he was 2 years old. He also did the preschool program with the FRC when he was 3 and he was 4, and he did kindergarten, first grade, and second grade. So, and his sister now, we're very fortunate enough to be able to have her be in the Board of Ed preschool program there. So I'm certainly not going to separate my children, and I'm sure that was another concern for parents as well, having one student go to one school and one go to another. And then also the issue of having to drive them to and from. So that, he's a Mustang. He's been a Mustang for 6 years, and her son also did the same program and same thing for 6 years. So that wasn't even an option for us. But again, I appreciate the fact that the board does know that there is an issue and that you are trying to do your best to try to take care of it. So if you would please consider maybe, having a tutor, again, to help with the 78 students that we are dealing with. Thank you.
Thank you. And I will say one of the perspectives that we're bringing to the board is that we wanted to see how this tutor was going to work out. They are going to spend about, and Ms. Parsons can jump in again, but they're going to spend about half their time with the second grade and about half their other time with the first grades, because they're going to pull from the first grade classes to make those 2 first grade classes smaller when they're working with first grade. But the overall plan is to see how that's working. We do want to, since we're working with a tighter budget, we want to see how that one tutor works out. And our goal would be to work with Ms. Collins and ourselves to see how that is going, and work with Ms. Lavalley and the other first grade teachers, Ms. LaValle, and the other 2 first grade teachers. And then if we do need to make a recommendation that we think another tutor would be appropriate, we would go forth with make that recommendation. We're trying to be as fiscally responsible as possible and still attentive to the needs of all of our students. So that's
And we, if I may interrupt,
that's okay.
and we as parents also have made it very known that if teachers need any help from us in any way that we can, packing backpacks or running to the office or doing things, that we would more than be happy to volunteer our time to help to possibly make the day a little bit easier for especially Mrs. Terrell.
Yeah, great.
It would also be very helpful if you could maybe get together a few of your more vocal, strong-willed parents and attend budget workshops and Board of Finance meetings, town council meetings. We need to band together and demand that the Board of Finance and the town council fully fund the Board of Education budget. I'm not saying this in a confrontational way, but the problem is that no one shows up until it's a problem. And we wanted this money, but we were cut. And there was no one there to say, don't do it. So that would be really super helpful.
We will try to pull up all the other moms of either group.
That's right.
Try to attend and try to do as much as we can.
Yes.
And some dads too. Get some dads too.
And the workshops that we offer actually are in January, so we'll make sure you all get that information. The only other thing I wanted to make a comment was, technically, if a parent decided to bring their child to Fisher, their siblings can go too. It's not one child for one grade. The family can go. So I think there was a misconception out there. There was just the child. No, your family, all your children can move if it's appropriate and the class sizes were appropriate at Fisher, because they do have a couple small higher ones. So we have to look at that by a case Just so you know that, okay?
Would work for me, that's because she's in preschool.
Right, exactly. For you, it's like that different. But
A small group of parents were floored. That would have been an option to pick. We just thought we were districted as we stood. Oh, did you know you could send? We knew a magnet school, of course. We didn't know we could even.
we actually have board policy on it, and you can look it up. Right, if any parent, it's all on the website. So we actually have a policy about that. So, but when in doubt, you can call at one of us or email us. Okay. And we appreciate you coming out. So.
I appreciate you guys really trying to make the effort to address this and trying to make it better.
Okay. Any other public comment? Going once? Going.
Danny's gonna
Oh, Danny, fine. You get to go in there.
I gotta say, I have a question for Barbara, because you brought up a great point, and you could answer it if you wanted. But the special needs, how many special needs kids are in that class, and don't they get help? Is there one-on-ones? Is there any help? I mean, she did bring up special needs, that's why I asked.
You're kind of skirting a little bit for me and my comfort zone when it comes to confidentiality, Danny. So I'll let Barbara, if she wants to answer that, but that's a little bit of a
Okay, let's make it generic. If per se there was a special needs, 3 special needs kids in a class of 27, how would that work?
It's not necessary. I'm going to answer part of this. It depends. Some of them have parents, some of them don't.
I know.
It all depends.
Some of them are one-on-one, some
Right.
of them, right.
So again,
We would be following the IEP.
exactly.
There you go. Thank you. I just have to sign my name. Last time I didn't sign my name. Thanks, I'm done.
Thank you, Danny. Anybody else? Okay. Moving on. Board liaisons, Harry S. Fisher.
Unable to attend, I had to work.
So I do have like 1 or 2 things. I believe when we saw at Brown Bag, our new principal said that they're looking forward to their book fairs coming off, right?
Yep, book fairs.
The opening of school went great. She was very excited, even though we had a lot of heat. Just in general, she was very enthusiastic and things went well. So we do know that if Greg can't make it, we do have other board members that are willing to step up. So please make sure board members know.
I've cleared my schedule.
Thank you.
With my employer.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So Plymouth Center.
So when I got in and I saw Cindy there, I just felt so useless because she's everywhere. And I think she might actually be the secret superintendent. I know we have one in public, but I don't know if she's actually behind the scenes doing stuff. So well, first off, it was my first time meeting the group. Very, very nice group of people. They seem really great. They had a Meadow Farms fundraiser that they said went very well, so I'm assuming they fundraised well. They were going to have an October family feast, but that got postponed because of some half day that was not supposed to happen. That happened. The heat half day, right? Because of the heat, right?
In October?
Not in October.
Not in October.
September, maybe.
Early September, we had 2
The
half.
ice cream social got canceled because of the
What about the Firehouse Subs one?
That's this one.
Yeah, I think they said it got postponed because of some half day. They didn't?
We had a half day for professional
There's
development.
a lot of events they're doing.
That was
out
on
there.
purpose.
I'm getting mixed up with all of them. That's another advantage of having Cindy there. It just shows how well I listen and understand these things.
Well, I don't want to know that.
One of the things that they were talking about that I found very interesting is that they're considering, it was a discussion, doing more events with Fisher Elementary, and the debate really centered around, should they or should they not do more events with Fisher? And it really centered around the people who said we shouldn't really mix too much with Fisher was like, we're a separate school, it's school spirit. It's difficult to have school spirit with 2 different schools. But it was that versus the idea of getting attention, and some of it media attention. If you have 2 schools together, it draws a little bit more public attention rather than 2 schools that are separate in the same town. I thought that was a very interesting discussion, and I also brought up the issue of the 2nd grade tutor that was added, and I just brought it up to hear what they had to say, and they all talked about it, and there was no conclusion or anything, just back and forth, all different types of opinions. So that was interesting and insightful as well.
Any questions or comments? I do have a comment, by the way, because my kids actually went to Plymouth Center too. When it was a PTA, both of the schools, we actually did a lot of events together, a lot of enrichment, because it helps the costs. So we did do that a lot. So I'm glad they're thinking about it again. And I know Cindy has a lot to do with that. So, but all right. Anything else? Okay. So Eli.
So our meeting is next week, but we are doing the roller skate night, which is town-wide. The girls brought up, so the high schoolers that sell the tickets, they're going to keep the profit to go to their class, and then it's open to Fisher, Plymouth Center, and it's a middle school fundraiser. We're getting ready for Red Ribbon Week as well for the end of October. The staff have a lot of different things planned for the kids, and that's pretty much it.
Okay. One more thing. Please explain the trunk or treat
Oh,
thing
so trunk or
that I
treat
missed.
is going to be on Friday, the 26th at Plymouth Center. If anyone has any vehicles that they would like to go and set up, or if you know of any companies that would like to set up their trucks to kind of make it like a touch a truck and a trunk or treat, so oil companies, bucket trucks, fire trucks, ambulance cops, that's what they're pretty much looking for. But Fisher is also doing a trunk or treat the same night as well, but they're doing it at the middle school in the parking lot. So that was an activity that I thought would be kind of neat for the two schools to do together.
You'll work on that.
Yeah.
Might have been too quick to try to.
Yeah, you'll get it. You'll get it. Anything else?
No.
Okay, high school.
Yes, the PTSA has met a couple times, and they have contracted with the sports center that they use for after grad, so that is all set. They have their deposit in. They were the first ones to get the deposit in, so they were super excited about that. So now what they have to do is every time there's a snow day, they have to like contact the sports center to be the first ones on the list to be there next. So it's like a game they're going to have to play all winter. So they don't want to hear from you.
Okay. I don't want to.
You know,
I don't want to have to make.
I
many
may not
calls.
feel the same way, but you know. They have ongoing fundraising. Any students, any parents of students in the high school, if you read Mr. Holt's Ruse News every week, I believe comes out on Thursdays. He has links to all of the fundraising through the Booster Club or the PTSA, and they will be doing fundraising all year long. They've got some new ideas, and they're still working on getting those together.
Any questions? Before we go to SEPTA, I just want to know, Cindy, you reported out on Booster Club. Do you want to do that every month? Because we'll actually add that.
Yeah, if you want to.
Okay. All right. So we'll get back to that in a second. But Dick, I'm actually going to refer to Melissa because we just worked on SEPTA. But then next month, will you pick up?
All I have to report is that I just received the dates.
Okay. Perfect. So Melissa, go ahead and.
So our first meeting of the year is our morning meeting, which will be next Wednesday, I believe it's the 17th, 9:30 a.m. at the Lucky Cup. And then on the 25th, we will do an evening meeting at Fisher in the library at 7 p.m. And we'll be celebrating our 15th year in existence.
So we're actually going to make sure that all of the elementary, every child has an invitation. But we're going to make sure that the middle school, all the teachers and special ed classes, and same with the high school. So basically, if you don't know what it is, it's our special education PTA. It's town-wide. But we are going to celebrate our 15th anniversary, so I'm excited about that. Any questions?
That was October 25th? Yes. Okay.
Make sure you get that wreath fundraiser out to everybody.
I will have that in the next couple of days, actually. So, yep, I got that going. So let's go back to Booster Club.
So Booster Club, we worked really, really hard with like 24 hours to get together for October 19th for a town-wide soccer night. It's our rival, Thomaston, against Terryville. Boys and girls will be playing here. We were able to get several lights donated to light up the field. We're going to have Officer Brody, that's his name, right?
Yep.
The SRO, he's going to be there as well. And it's going to be a really fun night. We'll have concessions, pizza, chips, drinks. And I believe there's going to be a fee to come in for the adults.
That's my understanding. Yep.
Yeah, to help offset some of the costs. But we want the whole town to come, you know, the Terryville, the younger kids that do soccer, to watch the game. It should be a really good, energetic game. So
I'm happy you got that approved. I know
yeah,
you were waiting for that.
So that's one thing that we're really excited on. And then we're just getting through the season. We want a couple more wins in for all of the teams. And encourage your kids to play sports, because cross country didn't have enough girls to make a complete team, and the JV soccer didn't have enough children as well to make a JV. So encourage your kids to sign up for sports. We need them.
Any questions or comments? Okay, moving on to board comments. Does anybody want to go before I go?
I just want to mention that I'm excited about the prospect for AP Computer Science, because I believe that might open up AP classes to some students who might not otherwise be interested in taking AP courses. That was the first thing that struck me, was that wouldn't be something that my daughter would have taken, and that's good, because she had plenty of opportunities to take AP courses. So I'm happy to know that AP courses can be opened up to, maybe students who wouldn't be taking the traditional ones we already offer. So that's exciting.
Anything else?
Go ahead.
Sarah.
I didn't get to say happy birthday at recess, so we didn't all get to sing. But today is her actual birthday. It's not like it was a couple days ago, and she still came to the meeting. And thank you guys for coming out to talk and help with the second grade. And pretty much all of the kids are really important. I'm the middle school PTA president, and I don't have any kids in the middle school. I'm on the booster club, and my daughter's on the JV team that we don't have. So I support all of the kids, even the ones that I can't really,
Absolutely.
My kids don't have to necessarily be in something, and I'll still be there to help out. So that's about it.
Anybody else? Well, I just want to say welcome back, Danny. We missed you. And Chris, too. We haven't seen you in a while. Hi, guys. They're kind of our honorary. They're here all the time. I want to thank both of you for coming out. We appreciate any parent input, so we do appreciate that.
And encourage your friends to come to these meetings, too. We love to have a public.
And we always have stuff to eat.
Yes, always have cake in this place. But I just want to say, again, thank you. And we have a big meeting coming up after this, so I'm going to keep my comments to that. So I need a motion to go into executive session at 8:53. Thank you. To discuss personnel matters, a contract of the PSAA, Plymouth School Administrative Association, with attached memorandum of understanding. I also need to invite Dr. Semmel and Mr. Hendrickson to our meeting. So can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Dick, all in favor? Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, we're going into the conference room that we always have. Oh, and just remember, we will not be coming back live, so everything else will be on our minutes. So we're letting everybody else go back because it may be a while. Thank you.